Welcome to another episode of Distory. My name is Kirk from walruscarp.com, and with me as always is Kate, the Disney Cicerone. Tonight we are embarking back into minetrain through nature's Wonderland. We had finished off last episode by passing by some marmots in Beaver Valley, and what better way to lead you into a tunnel and a cave than some marmots leading us to Cascade Peak. Kate, are you excited about the peak and waterfalls tonight?
Yeah, it's a peak. Talking about Cascade Peak is always kind of bittersweet, but I really do think so much of the stuff we're talking about in these early episodes of this series are so important to understanding the history behind Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, which is the ultimate goal of this series, and we will get there eventually. But you won't fully understand all the things that are in Big Thunder Mountain Railroad until you go back and revisit some of these old elements from these old attractions. So, yeah, I'm excited to head to Cascade Peak.
Like a typical historian, the only way to go forward is to go back.
That's right. Cascade Peak was known as the second great mountain in Disneyland, which I kind of love that name and framing it up. I know, Kirk, you were talking about you have some really great pictures from this as well.
Yeah, I got you. I'm pulling up a good one right now.
I did actually find the original elevation for it, the west elevation for Cascade Peak, which is pretty neat to see the original drawing from it. So this was a 75-foot mountain that pretty much was just hollow on the inside. There wasn't like anything in it. It's not hidden basketball courts or anything like that, like there is in the Matterhorn Mountain, which isn't a full basketball court.
They actually had several pickleball courts, I believe.
Yeah, just some badminton on the side, you know, whenever they got bored. No. It had two waterfalls called the Twin Sisters up high, and then it had a waterfall that was down lower, which you can see in the picture that Kirk has there, and that was called Big Thunder Falls, which of course is where we get the name for Big Thunder Mountain. And a lot of people don't realize that that is where that name comes from. It's just a little homage to what we used to have but don't have anymore.
Yeah, and one thing that you can see in the photo as well as Kate's schematics too is that Thunder Falls goes over the tracks. So we're actually going to be going through a small little kind of archway / tunnel, and then behind the waterfall, which was one of the cool pinnacle parts, especially for kids.
Yeah, and I will just throw out that if you are visiting the Rivers of America and you go on like the Mark Twain or the Columbia today in Disneyland, you can still see the two rocks that kind of frame Big Thunder Falls. They still exist and they're still there. And the tracks are still there for the most part. So you can still go see where this waterfall used to be, but the waterfall isn't there anymore. So Cascade Peak was designed to hide Bear Country and Beaver Valley from guests traveling on the river. So it was actually kind of a way to hide those scenes, so they didn't give the whole ride away just by going on another ride. But you can still see the train going around the mountain from the river, which was pretty neat. I have a quote from Vacationland from summer of 1960 that said it was easily recognized by the giant waterfalls that plummet from rocky ledges high on its granite slopes. There were 3 pumps that fed 91 tons of water into pools and into the 11 million gallon rivers of America. The water came from a combination of city water and also wells that Disney has on property. Do you have things you want to share about Cascade Peak? I feel like I'm the only one.
No, well, dude, because you have like all these gallons per second, you know, information. I knew that they were the 3 sisters. I know in the script they physically are talking about the sisters. If you never gone underneath a waterfall before, then get set, because we're coming up on Big Thunder, the biggest falls in these here parts. You don't have to worry though, unless the wind changes. And then them 2 falls, they call them twin sisters, I reckon, because they're always babbling.
I
don't think that one's that bad. There's way worse ones in here.
It's not great that there's worse ones in there, but...
Dude, welcome to Disneyland in the 60s, dude.
It's true. West. What do you expect, right? Here's a really great shot of all 3 of those falls together. So something that's really interesting that was on top of Cascade Peak, but only for a brief moment in history, which is why we don't have many photos of it, was the Bighorn Mountain sheep. They were positioned near the mountain goat, which was also hanging out there. And I have a cost for you, Kirk. I know you loved the cost of the raccoon on the last one. So the cost of the Bighorn Mountain sheep was $29,449. So it was not a cheap sheep.
No, that is an expensive sheep.
And I have a really fun story about this from Bob Gurr. He said this was the most successful early animal that he ever did. He said all the animal had to do was walk out from behind some rocks to greet guests riding the mule train on a path on the mountainside. The gag was real simple to build and had an easy one-cylinder action. After successful tests, it was placed into operation on the mine train through Nature's Wonderland. We ran it just one time, then turned it off, never to be seen again. It was my best and most believable animal ever. Why? The mules took it to be real. As the first guest-laden mule train approached, the sheep leapt out at the lead mule, who promptly reared back. The poor creature toppled off the mountain path, falling into the river below, dragging all the trailing mules and guests with it. We waited a week and then turned the sheep on again, and this time the same mule stopped shortly before where the sheep had scared it and refused to go any further, which is very typical of mules, right? To the mule, the sheep was real and was hiding behind the rocks to get him. So the sheep was never operated again, but I knew for sure I had designed a winner.
Who would have thought that mules would be so stubborn?
Shocker, right?
Yeah, I love that story because, again, it shows that attention to detail, the success of it. I mean, it's absolutely incredible what they did because I mean it basically created a new era of realism when it comes to audio animatronics. And I know it's just a mule but I mean that's how good it was.
Well, it's really crazy though, that story is because it was so dangerous for guests because the guests went with the mules and fell off the ledge into the river.
Right. So bad. Like imagine going into here. That's basically where their pathing. Actually, their pathing probably would have been on this side.
Yeah, I think it's higher there. Yeah, it's not a good thing. So that didn't last long. They had to get rid of them, which is a bummer. You kind of hope that they would move it maybe to a place in like maybe on the railroad or something like that where it didn't have live animals that were going to get startled, but it is what it is. Well, I will say that do you happen to have a picture of the poster from Nature's Wonderland handy? This was one of the posters for the grand opening of Nature's Wonderland. And if you notice right in the center of it, there is a big orange sheep just hanging out in the middle. So he was prominently featured on the poster artwork, but ironically removed from it not that far after. And also, I'll just mention that this poster was modeled after the 1869 Union Pacific Platte Valley Route grand opening poster. So they kind of stole this design from another.
Well, I mean, that was such a successful poster. Everyone knows that poster.
That's right. I mean, I have one on my wall, right? So... But anyway, this if you're listening to the podcast rather than watching, it says Nature's Wonderland Railroad, the Wilderness Route. Mine trains and pack mules leave Rainbow Ridge in Frontierland to take you on a true life adventure through the newly explored Nature's Wonderland with its splendid scenic spectacles and amazing lifelike activities of more than 200 birds, beasts, and reptiles at work and at play in their natural habitat made possible through the marvelous medium of audio animatronics. And then it lists all the different things you can see on it. But
now, I have to, before we tried to leave, I found this great picture of Walt and a kid, and the kids try to touch the waterfall.
I think it's one of his grandkids.
he's having the time of his life looking at that waterfall.
They were the same, like, Beaver Valley kids, and I think those are his grandkids.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
he did
fun.
like a little promotional shoot with his grandkids, which is really fun.
Why not? Free. They're free actors.
Free actors. You didn't have to pay them. No, there's some really wonderful shots of Walt Disney with his grandkids in the parks, and he clearly just loved them so much, which is really special. And I also love this shot. I do have one really nice one of the Mike Fink keel boats in front of Cascade Peak.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. So Cascade Peak was around for quite some time, even after they added Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, but it wasn't really well maintained and eventually just kind of rotted out, and it was not safe anymore as a structure. So instead of repairing it, they just tore it down. And so there's like a little hill there that you can now see where Cascade Peak used to be. And again, you can see the two rocks at the bottom where the waterfall used to go through, but there really isn't much of Cascade Peak left anymore, which is super sad because it was one of Disneyland's mountains. Are we ready to move on? Are you?
Yeah. And I have two transition images. So this is just before we're entering into the tunnel. So the front part of the train is, and then this is taking to our next section, Bear Country. Now, why is this significant? You go through a tunnel, which is, again, a very significant kind of transition usage by the Disney company to kind of like, every time, this is like subtle things, right? You see the train station, you go underneath, and that is a transition period into Main Street. And then we have it in between lands a lot of times in Walt Disney World. Specifically, one of the most notable ones is in between Liberty Square and heading to Fantasyland. You go underneath Columbia Harbor House's like archway there. That little transition period, I think, helps guests know that you're moving on to something that's completely different.
Yeah, it's very much like a cross dissolve or a fade in, fade out, if cinematography, because these people were filmmakers that were making this, right? So they thought like filmmakers. So when they transitioned to a new scene, they would do something that would make it evident that you're clearly going into a new scene. They did the same thing from the Marmot Tunnel, as we'll call it, from Beaver Valley into Cascade Peak and around the Rivers of America. And now we're having another one as we head into Bear Country.
Yeah, so we got an opportunity to go to True Life Adventures Beaver Valley, and now we're there at Bear Country.
Are we ready to talk about the bears?
Let's talk about it.
Super excited. So this is from Walt Disney's True Life Adventure. Bear Country is the documentary that this is all based on. And I love this poster. It says, "The fun, fury, and true life of the Rockies' shaggy ruler." And there's all kinds of concept art for this. Do we want to start with the concept art first?
Yeah, do you want me to lift a giant book?
Yeah, I would love to see your skill there.
To get... Yes.
This is one of our favorite books for Distory because it has all of Mark Davis's concept art, most of it in it. It's called Mark Davis in his own words, Imagineering the Disney Theme Parks. This is volume 1. And what is it? Chris Merritt and Pete. Who else is it?
Pete Doctor and Chris Merritt.
So you can see here a whole bunch of images, early sketches. Something that Mark Davis would do in his process, in his creative process, he would just create a ton of things. And also Mary Blair did this too, but she did it in a painting medium. But he would just sketch tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of ideas. And then they'll just use the ones that they like the most out of that. And he did this for Pirates. He did it for virtually everything that he worked on. Haunted Mansion. And he did it for these little bears here. So you can see all kinds of little sketches. I love the guy with like a pipe. Like, where did that guy show up?
I'm pretty sure it says Mark Davis and Bill Evans below it. They're like next to the pipe people, but that's it. There's nothing else in terms of
was it supposed to be Bill Evans?
Yeah, I guess. They're saying Bill Evans and Mark Davis. I don't see that. I mean, maybe it kind of looks like Mark Davis, but
no, maybe Bill Evans, because he was the landscaper for Disneyland. Those of you who don't know.
I don't know.
But they had a lot of different gags here. I have one that's like a bear trying to get honey from a beehive, a bear scratching his back on a tree, a bear swimming in the water, a bear fishing in the water. There's just all kinds of concepts. I think the ones of the bear scratching are some of my favorite because they scratch their back, but they also scratch their back sides. And he showed all of the animation for that.
Yeah, so. Mark Davis has a quote in here. "The bears were all there when I came, but I think I did some things with the staging a little differently. I did some restaging with the animation that they had, and they had like scratching bears, little fellows that they took from True Life Adventure films. But the funny thing is that if you have one bear that's scratching way down the line and another one way up in the middle and still one all the way down there, it doesn't mean much. So I thought, let's put them all together and have them all scratch." Walt liked the idea of kind of like a moving tableau. And this way, if you missed something, it would encourage guests to come back and try to catch it another time. So there you go. Catch how many scratching bears did you see this time?
Did you count them?
Yeah. You know what's funny is in this concept art here too, you see some two little bear cubs who are up a tree, right?
Yeah.
So two little bear cubs up a tree, but you don't see the beehive, which actually makes it into the final iteration. Is there?
Oh, yeah.
They're climbing with purpose, but not in the concept art, which would have been
cool bear.
totally, yeah, that would have totally been a Mark Davis decision too, to like have something funny like the or a purpose for why they're there.
I don't know if they ever had this one. This is like a mama bear defending her baby cubs away from maybe like
No,
grizzly bear, black bear.
Although when I start showing pictures of these bears, there is one bear that does not look like it belongs at all.
One of these bears is not like the other.
No, that's very true. That's exactly how it feels.
I have a quote. Oh, this is actually a line from the script. It says, bears is one of the most playful animals there is. Lazy, too. All they want to do is lay around and scratch, fish, and swim. That is when they ain't sleeping.
Yeah, they don't do a heck of a lot, do they?
I do have a cost for, I think this is per bear. I have a cost. So each one of these bears in the Mine Train Through Nature's Wonderland cost $64,733. So they were not cheap bears.
Whoa.
Which is probably why we don't have as many as we see in the concept art,
Yeah, well, they just went with the bare essentials.
The bare necessities.
They also saved money on wardrobe by not giving them any shoes. They just went barefoot.
So many of the rocks in Bear Country were created by WED Imagineering, so they were not necessarily real, to get the look that they wanted for the area and the staging. So not all of these rocks are actual rocks. And some also hid mechanical features like we talked about last week. A lot of these animals that are maybe against a tree or near a rock or something, like it's hiding some of their mechanical stuff that maybe wouldn't fit inside their body. That's true of most of the animals.
You're telling me this isn't a real rock? I mean, all of my real rocks look like blankets on top of a generator.
Yeah. Well, they also said that they did select some real true life rocks and to import, but they hand selected some true life rocks to bring into the scenery to add to atmosphere.
That must have been a hard decision.
Oh. Yeah, don't take it for granted.
All right, ready? Can I just point out there are some bears that are fishing. And then this one, they must have taken the bear cubs down because you can see the beehive above. But there are bear cubs that eventually do make it down, but maybe they were under like a refurb at the time of this picture. Then you get the tableau of the bears each scratching in a different position. And then you have this bear. What is up with him?
Yeah, he's a different kind of bear.
It looks like a man in a bear costume just standing out there going like, I wonder if anybody would think I'm real. Like, why are they all black bears? And then you just get this random Smokey the Bear looking grizzly just standing up.
He kind of reminds me of this one, but this one's leaning against a tree.
Yeah, and we get the leaning against the tree right here in the center. This guy, out of left field. I have no idea.
He does look like he's in a costume, which is
It does not
strange.
look like, I mean, I know they're all not real bears. Like, I totally get it. But, and then here you get one where you can see that grizzly bear, not here. Instead, they do have a standing bear. Oh, look. This is, so I think they might have replaced that other one, or maybe that one was there before and it didn't move. And this is more authentic.
Is this one that I'm looking at? I think might be the one that you're seeing from the front.
But I think, right, correct. And they use that in a vacationing guide. I saw the same cover with this, but this is definitely a different bear than the one I just showed you, because this one is more stout and sturdy. But then you can also see the bear cubs, the two bear cubs. So remember you said like the mama bear was the only real bear cubs we get are the one that fell from the tree and then two that are going up to get the beehive.
Right. Interestingly, they're not going to get a beehive in this particular one. It's a different scene.
And then you also get some some fishing bears.
Oh, the fishing bears are my favorite.
Mhm.
You remember when we talked about the Jungle Cruise, in the Jungle Cruise, how they have a lot of problems with animals that are in the water because they need maintenance so much more often because of the water messing with all the mechanisms and whatnot. So sometimes when you see old films of this, they aren't really necessarily all animated that much. That's probably because they just were very hard to maintain in the water.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I love all the ones in the water. And they didn't use real animal fur for any of these bears, in case anybody's curious. By this point, they had decided they're going to use synthetic fake fur.
I remember in Daveland, he was recalling when he had ridden this ride and said how scared he was as a kid going over that trestle bridge. In the script, they mention, and I guess this is supposed to like make it a little bit more, a little bit more adventurous or whatever. But it says, we're coming into bear country now, folks. And while we're crossing that old trestle, you got to sit real still. No telling how long she's going to last. So for a kid, you're like, oh God, we're going to fall into a bear lake. Like, I don't want to do that.
I have a picture of the actual fish. This is, I think, a newer photo because sometimes these fish still pop up. So if you are over near almost the backside of Big Thunder, there is a pond there and you could see the tunnel. This is what it looks like now. This is the pond where that trestle used to be. And you can see the little tunnel where it used to come out. But the jumping fish are still in the water. And I found a picture of the mechanism that makes them jump, which was like the coolest thing I have seen in a long time.
Ladies and gentlemen, remember that the exciting weekend Kate has had. Now the jumping fish mechanism is way better. I'm going to show the bears moving on trees and scratching.
Yeah, you go show the things. I'll go find it. Yeah.
And look, you can see the fish in this too. They're all the way out in the back.
Yeah, they're really cool. And the fact that you can still kind of see them jump every once in a while and people think there are real fish in there.
Well, how about this? This is the trestle bridge over a gigantic insert into a newspaper promoting the 1960 new Nature's Wonderland at Disneyland. And then it has all of these other attractions as well.
I found it.
I can see why you were excited.
I was so excited to see it.
I mean, seriously, I've never wanted to see a piston fish in my entire life until now.
It's cool though, right? Like
yeah,
you see the
very
river drained.
Yeah,
So
'cause when do you ever get to see the underwater?
never. And it's just hanging out there. So go see if you can see any of the fish jump. That's your job next time you go to Disneyland. Just stare at the water for a long time until somebody asks you if you're okay.
And to which you reply, no, I'm not, but I'm working on it.
That happened to me when I was in Disney World and I was outside Jungle Cruise and I was just like looking at the circle that's right outside the queue because I was thinking about
The
how
alligators?
no, because that was only in Disneyland. No, I was thinking about the leaky tikis and like all of how they moved, those statues moved from that spot up above. And so I was thinking about like, could this have been the spot? So I was looking on my phone at like the old picture of where they used to be and like staring at this circle drain on the ground. And like a cast member came up to me and like, are you okay?
We've got another one of the leaky tikis. Can you take care of the leaky tiki lady? Come with us.
I tried to explain it. I think it just made it worse.
I'm sure that didn't go well. Oh, my goodness, dude.
All right. So shall we talk about the elk in this area then? The Olympic elk?
Please, let's do it.
So this is from the true life documentary, The Olympic Elk from 1952. So you can see a theme here with the living desert and the Olympic elk and bear country and Beaver Valley, all just named after these true life adventure films. So do you have the script from this or do you want me to read mine?
Okay. Yeah, I do. Nature's Wonderland is awful purty, but sometimes she can be a mighty rugged place to live. Out here in the wilderness, the struggle for survival leaves only the strong and sometimes the lucky. Say, look at those banks across the Bear Creek there. Now there's a struggle for survival. 2 stags are battling for them cow elk. Maybe you folks can tell me, though. Does getting 2 women folk mean you're the winner or the loser? Never could figure that one out.
I didn't have that part of it.
Oh, yeah. I got it.
Oh.
So that was the big grown one. That was the one where, so like Dallas McKenna has like at least 4 jabs at women throughout this script. It's pretty horrible. This was the one where women would be like, what?
What? Yeah. What is exactly right? Like, what? That tells me a lot about whoever wrote this script.
Right. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So this account from Bob Gurr talks about, he talked about the rhinos and the Jungle Cruise and how they learned a lot. For those of you who don't know that story, essentially, we talked about this in the Jungle Cruise, but they had a really complicated mechanism where, like, this was such early technology for this. So they had the rhinos and they would go one way and they would like charge the boat. And then they were supposed to turn around and walk back and like turn around again and get ready to like charge the boat again, right? But sometimes they got a little bit mixed up and turned around, so they would charge the boat tail first. So he would say they were essentially mooning the guests. So Bob Gurr said this was a big lesson for me. Never depend on a machine design that cannot be precisely operated in a specific defined manner. Any design that, even though simple, can develop random action may eventually be a failure. So, that's what we say about failure. You just learn from it, right? So with the battling elk machine, 2 bull elk are connected at the antlers and supported by 2 horizontal pivots at the belly and the sides. So pivots were mounted on 2 vertical swing arms pivoting in a common base and connected with the horizontal tie rod. This is a lot of tech speak, so this is for all you engineering people out there. So one air cylinder would move the arms back and forth to simulate the elk pushing and shoving each other. Additional foreleg action was by smaller air cylinders, so they would move as well. All the cylinders were controlled by on-off air valves operated by a multicam drum timer. By adjusting the air valve flow rates, we could get a real random but predictable action almost as good as the later fully programmable digital show control systems. These elk ran trouble-free for many years. So I do have a picture of them building it. You can see the final version of it on the top, and then you can see them constructing the bull elk on the bottom. And I did have a note that the elk actually moved from one side of the tracks to the other, presumably farther away from the mules so they wouldn't scare them like the sheep did. So I'm guessing what happened was after the bighorn sheep scared the mules and dumped all the people in the rivers of America, they're like, oh, what other animatronics might the mules be scared by? And they moved them further away from the mule train path. So then they were replaced by an owl, which we can talk about in a minute.
I have another quote from the Mark Davis book, too, about staging and mechanisms.
Yeah.
So look what we've done with all these nature films. Copy the action out of that. And this idea that he took any piece of action out of them and provided it with a comparatively static, where you could duplicate the same thing in mechanics. The thing is, for instance, and I think this is a philosophy I have for all of these attractions, is that you can create pictures in dimension, 3-dimensional pictures, and that's the old saying we used. If there were 2 ways to do a scene, the simpler one was always better. And sometimes that was very hard to convince yourself to do, to not be overly tricky or fancy. Keeping it simple makes things clear.
Yep. That's a tough lesson to learn because I think, getting a little philosophical for a moment, I feel like we often do want to try to do more or add more or make it more elaborate or do something, but sometimes simpler truly is better and more effective. And I think that's true in design as well. And who was it? Coco Chanel said always remove the last accessory that you put on. I don't know, it's not a direct quote, but that's like the idea, was that less is more. So, anyway.
Well, then who designed this ad with less is more? There's literally, it's like, okay, we want an ad and we want to talk about the mine train through nature's Wonderland, but we also want to include every other attraction that we've ever built for Disneyland. Okay, I got you, fam.
I think mine's the same as yours, but it's like
the same
laid
exact.
out
Yeah,
a
you
little
just
bit
have
differently.
like, right, correct. But like you could tell that this was obviously one of the keystone sections of the attraction.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
The antler grapple.
The excitement of the battling elk, which actually is pretty cool to go see out in nature if you've ever had the chance to go to somewhere like Yellowstone or whatnot. I believe it happens in the fall is when that happens. I'm not up on all of my elk knowledge. But
yeah, I usually only follow amateur battling elk, not the Olympic ones. So I got to look at my times.
No professional battling elk.
Right.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, so they were originally replaced by the owl. I don't know if you have a...
I could not find the owl. Ooh.
What?
All right, sorry. Wait. What image were we looking for?
The owl? What were you looking for?
I was looking for a bobcat, but guess what's better than finding a picture of a bobcat?
What?
It's finding my picture of the bobcat with the owl.
Oh, yes. Was there more than one owl? Two owls?
There's two little baby owls and then a big owl and then the bobcat going up the tree.
There you go.
Yep.
Well done. Gold star. I did have a note about the red-tailed hawk with the bobcat stalking up. So it's actually this, I think, is not the owl. I think this is actually red-tailed hawk. So I'm taking your star back.
That's an owl. Like, you fight me on it, all right?
No,
Tell me that's not an owl.
That does look like an owl, to be fair. But my note says that it was a red-tailed hawk with the bobcat stalking up the tree. So it's possible, you know what probably happened? It probably was a hawk. And then they moved things around when they moved the battling elk, is my guess. Is at one point it was probably a red-tailed hawk, but I don't know for sure. Still speculation.
Well, okay, so I think you are correct because in this image it has a bobcat with red-tailed hawk and babies. So I think just my image has the owl and babies. Which one came first though? The red-tail or the owls? This was made. This was a later on.
The red-tailed hawk and the egg. I have an interesting note about the nest for the red-tailed hawk confused a mother bird who was flying overhead one time, and she tried to deposit her own children's dinner down the throats of the young hawks that were in the nest. So I do think they look different than the ones that you saw, because those didn't look like they were nesting babies. They were just sitting on the tree, on the limb. So I think that the red-tailed hawk maybe looks a little bit different than that one. That one definitely looks owl-like to me.
That is an owl. That's
an owl.
That's a great horned owl.
That's for sure an owl. Yeah. Where is the hawk then? I do have a note about the owls. The Disney created ones were pecked into the repair shops by frustrated crows and blackbirds. So same like the ravens that were in the other tree. It's like the birds just kind of went after them because they really
jealousy.
Went after the owls. Yeah, they're like, you're in my territory. Back off, owl. And they said that the migrating birds, so I have an account from Wathel Rogers who said these migrating birds flying through nature's wonderland are a sight. They swoop down like dive bombers on the attack, sink their beaks into the raven's wing, and take off as though someone had fed them a loaded worm. Then from a tree nearby, they stare at the raven and try to figure out why he doesn't fight back. So they had a lot of birds with shattered wings, an owl with a busted beak, and feathers all over the place, because of the local birds not appreciating these birds honing in on their territory. But luckily the live birds didn't sustain any injuries. So the live birds were okay, which is good. And I have a note from Bill Martin that says, the other day a bird landed on my head out here. When I brushed him off, he flapped away as though I had just seen a ghost move. I guess he thought I was animated too. So maybe they got used to the animatronics animals.
Probably.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is I went back to this map because this is my best litmus of where I think animals were. And I have not seen all of them in either video or photograph form. But this map does mention red-tailed hawk and babies and horned owls.
Oh, yeah. So they're different. Pickens. See, look. Oh, I found one about a nest. I found a nest in a tree. This has to be the red hawk nest.
Right. Okay, so I'm assuming then there are two bobcats.
Yeah, look, there's a bobcat climbing up the tree here.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's
So we're just like infested with bobcats that are going after birds.
well, not just birds. There's other animals that the bobcats are going after. Like throughout this entire experience, there's nothing but bobcats trying to eat things.
This really is a true life adventure.
Who did that narration?
Yeah, because I feel like these are different trees too, right? Those are definitely different trees.
It's not the same thing at all. No way.
Yeah,
Completely
really
different.
interesting.
They're on different sides of the river, you know?
Yeah, that's so interesting.
I have so many pictures of bear country, but it again, I think the focal point for everybody were the bears.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody was really looking the other directions.
It's lucky that we have any pictures of the bobcats or other stuff that's happening. It was like the battling elk and the bears. That's what you're looking at here. And that's what they meant for you to see. You know, they staged these very, very well in that they're like, this is what we want you to be looking at here. And of course, they had all the other animals for kind of like ambiance and also something else, a re-ride, right? Like Walt Disney wanted you not to be able to see everything in one ride. Every time you go on it, you see kind of something new. That was part of the plussing that they did to the Jungle Cruise when he heard a woman say like, oh, we've already been on that ride. We don't need to go on it again. We've seen it already. You know, he's like, oh, well, we got to add stuff to this. So like people want to go on it again. So same kind of concept there with Bear Country. Alrighty. So we already had the painted desert. Now it becomes kind of the living desert, so to speak. Because it's based on the true life documentary. I know you guys can't guess this one, The Living Desert. So the desert itself, though, was reduced in size in this newer version of Mine Train. A lot of the rocks were kind of the same as what we talked about last time. But they also had, they painted the cliffs and they gave them a new paint job. The desert's got her beauty too. The yellow streaks running through them sandstone cliffs are called coconino. The red, we call them supai. I think is how you say that.
That's correct.
Yeah. So it's interesting too that they also integrated this things from this true life adventure, the Vanishing Prairie. We'll also see in this area as well.
As we pass through the old natural arch bridge, you can see the great living desert down below. You know, the desert's a dry place and full of some pretty mean varmints. You gotta be careful of sidewinders, wild pigs, and even mountain lions. But the desert's got her beauty too. The yellow streaks running through them sandstone, and that's where you finished off. Just wanted to get that beginning part in because I think
I didn't have that part.
the natural bridge part is again our transition period. So you see this like giant arch, and what was cool about this, and we had talked about it previously when we were just doing it as Rainbow Ridge Mine Train, is the mule.
Rainbow Ridge Mine. Rainbow Caverns Mine.
Rainbow Caverns Mine Train. Sorry.
I know what you meant.
The mule train would get, sorry, I'm saying like everything, all the same. It's like all the same adjectives and all the
There's
same
a lot
nouns,
of words. It's like Mine Train through Nature's Wonderland featuring the Rainbow Caverns.
I know. Let me just rub this book on this mic again.
And...
Let me just...
Where were we?
I don't know.
All right. I have a quote from Morgan Evans that says, "A living desert must in truth appear as a living desert." So if you remember, it's a great quote.
It's a great quote. It's a great quote.
So if you remember back when we talked about this desert the first time, there really wasn't much life in it. There was a couple of small things here and there, but there wasn't much life at all. So they added a ton of animals. Do you want to talk about that one a little bit that you were showing there, Kirk?
Yeah, I just think this is a cool one because it's, again, bobcat and then wild pigs. And the bobcat is kind of like hiding on the top of one of these massive cacti. Scary, dude. Don't show me that. Look at that thing.
Sorry.
Look at him. He had to run all the way up there. It was terrifying.
So this is actually from Walt Disney's Living Desert true life documentary. And you can see the bobcat kind of climbs up this cactus and then it falls and breaks. And he has to run away from these peccaries, I think is how you say it. A peccary is a pig-like mammal resembling a wild pig or boar. Sometimes they're called javelins too, so that's the name of those. But the cactus breaks and falls, and the bobcat runs up another cactus and then kind of perches on top. And then he hangs out there and gives himself a bath. You know, the important things that cats do. So really fun little nod to the living desert that they put in there. And we might see that again show up in Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. So,
Well, where's my picture of a bobcat on a cactus? Bobcat on a cactus. And then I do have some piggies. What are these things called again?
javelins or peccaries.
Okay, javelins.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so story time. Like, you know, I called them a wild boar, and somebody was like, "No, that's a peccary." Like, they were like mad at me in my comment section. I was like, "I didn't. Okay, all right. Let me look. Let me look."
Yeah, let's learn.
Yeah, and it sure enough, it is a peccary, which is also sometimes called a javelin, is another name for it. But it does like resemble a wild pig.
Don't say it. Don't say it.
It's a pig-like mammal, but it's
Okay,
not
that's
exactly like a boar. So they are different animals. So, you know, just saying, don't call it a wild boar. Somebody might be upset.
Well, it's not the right thing. We want to be
It's not.
factually accurate, so why not?
It's
We learn.
true.
We learn. But I do. I mean, this is exactly from the documentary Lifted, and I think it's a great scene, and probably for guests. I mean, we see this in Big Thunder, and I love that it started here, and it
Well-
really didn't start here. It started in the documentary.
Yeah, you really have to think back and put it in context of people will recognize it from the movie, right? From the documentary. So think of things that we like from some of our favorite movies that we see in attractions. And we're like, oh, that's from that scene in the movie. You know, that's the exact same thing that people would feel about that back then. It's not familiar to us now because there's not that many of us that have seen these true life adventure films, unless you're weird like us and are obsessed with Disney history.
Well, dude, think about this is a silly one, but it's an animation, right? When the gray stuff came to Walt Disney World, and you could actually have it in Be Our Guest.
Yeah.
Because you know it's an iconic part, not only in the film, but in its vocal song. Try the gray stuff, it's delicious. And then they made it happen. There were people who signed up and got reservations just to try the gray stuff
Yeah.
because it became a reality.
Yep.
And by the way, it's just like Cool Whip with crushed Oreos. So,
Shh.
wait,
Don't ruin it for people.
cookies and cream mousse. It's delicious. I don't think it rhymes as well.
No, definitely not. Other things we have in this desert region, we have pronghorn antelope and desert deer by a desert pond. So I can see them. There are the pronghorn antelope.
Yeah, there's a lot of them too in this.
Yeah. There's also a coyote that's over here somewhere. I think he's perched. Oh, he's on the rock. If you kind of look in the back there, he's perched up on top of the rock. Is the coyote? He's
Yeah, I
very
actually
hard to
have
see.
I have quite a few up close coyote pictures.
Oh, I'm excited for that. Oh, look, I found a red hawk. Look, there he is with the babies.
Okay. Okay, that's an
Better late than
interesting look because that nest was empty in your previous one.
Yes.
So that's cool.
So maybe he was out for maintenance or something in that other
Maybe.
photo. Right. So you got the coyote here. I got him from another view.
This one has some birds behind it too, but I can't. Or actually, no, that's a double. That's a double coyote. Look, there's double set of ears.
Oh, yeah. Oh, interesting. That's a
Yeah.
very interesting perspective. I have some mountain lions kind of in a rock cave, maybe hiding from the sun. And then also up on the rock is a vulture, which would make sense for the desert. It looks like a turkey vulture.
Let me check my animal guide. Oh, look, it actually says in here bobcat and peccary.
Peccary. Yeah.
Wow.
See?
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. It's a real peccary.
There's a lot of bobcats. Do you see there's a second bobcat?
There's
one-
way more. They're everywhere.
They have a bobcat infestation.
They've got a bobcat problem.
That's crazy. Like, I never realized there were quite so many. I always knew about the one up on the cactus, and I knew one that was climbing a tree, but I didn't realize there was two climbing a tree, and there's also one on a rock.
In the cactus area too, there's supposedly an elf owl, but I haven't I tried to find it because it's in like a hollowed out section of the cacti, but it was hard to find them.
So there's a saguaro cactus forest, and the script goes, the desert heat sometimes gets to you and makes these here cactus take on strange shapes like animals and sometimes even people. This one here is one of my favorite pictures because it also has a sign that says break, like as a reminder to the operator.
Yeah, like slow it down, bud.
And then we also, the seven dwarfs cacti that we talked about in the previous episode that are supposed to resemble the seven dwarfs, but maybe don't that much.
Yeah, I don't think they do.
This is probably my best shot of cacti.
Ooh.
Yeah. And because they got these flowers that are ever blooming. Other animals that are in here before we talk about the geysers, the desert tortoises. I also have rattlesnakes, which would watch the train go by and the tails would rattle. And this was in Rattlesnake Gulch, aptly named.
Literally the worst place on planet Earth.
Yeah, if you watch the video of Minetrain Through Nature's Wonderland, it goes right by the rattlesnakes, and it's like a guy's like reaching his hand over and like offering a popcorn, and I'm like, what are you doing? There's the guy offering popcorn to a snake.
Oh, that was so real. You literally just tried to feed it, bro.
And there's also armadillo, which I don't have any pictures of the armadillo, but I did see concept art for it. And I think it's kind of cute because they're giving each other little like nose kisses, and I have a note that said Mark Davis made them a little bit cuter than they actually are in real life. Like he made them a little bit more like animated so that they would have the cute factor rather than the kind of like ick factor.
Ooh. Dude, armadillos are cute. I've seen quite a few in Busch Gardens. They have a bunch. They have like 2 different types. And yeah, they're I don't know, they're really cute.
I've wanted to see one my whole life. Still haven't.
I still haven't seen one here in Florida. I did find that's probably a red-tailed hawk and rattlesnake concept art. And then there is this roadrunner and rattlesnake, and it says, make slightly larger than life size. It will look smaller outside.
Oh, interesting.
2 toes forward, 2 toes to the rear. Tail moves up and down. Wings move up and down. Beak opens. Small gopher snake. Neck and tongue move. This was from April 1975. Roadrunner and gopher snake in the actual attraction.
Oh, yeah, that's so interesting.
Mm-hmm. There was a Gila monster. There were jackrabbits. There were kit foxes, badgers, desert cottontail, red shoulder hawks here as well. And then the last thing I want to show, and skunks. There were spotted skunks. And I do have a picture of the T-Rex.
We're talking about the dinosaur bones.
Yeah, it's the dinosaur bone graveyard, and it actually has a rattlesnake coming out of its eye.
It was called Graveyard of the Dinosaurs. And this is the pack mules also passed by this dinosaur trail with these fossilized dinosaur bones. And this is very significant to Big Thunder Mountain Railroad history, which we won't get too much into right now. But this is where, if you are familiar with maybe the end of Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, this might look a little bit familiar to you.
Yeah, it's disgusting. There's literally a snake like interwoven through the entire skull and then popping out. This dinosaur happens to be a mom, or was a mom.
I don't think I've ever noticed the eggs before.
Yeah, little eggs.
I do have the foxes, which we've talked about were restaged by Mark Davis. And the foxes, he kind of just turned them so that they were looking at each other just to make the gag more effective rather than just them staring at the train or whatever. But the cost of the fox was $2,933 a piece.
Cheap. Those
comparatively
are cheap. Give it away.
The bears and the elk.
Yeah, the bears were expensive.
Yeah. All right. Should we talk a little bit about the geyser country?
Sure.
Okay. So there's 4 geysers that are in geyser country, including Old Unfaithful, which of course is a pun off of the name Old Faithful, which operates in Yellowstone. I mean, it just exists in Yellowstone, which is a very like geothermal, active geothermal area. which erupts roughly every hour and a half, so to speak, in about 90 minutes. And I did get to go visit this with my family, so I have a little video of it erupting, which is kind of fun.
That's how it operates when it is operating.
So they turn on the valve. It erupts. It's actually quite interesting to see. And I just have a few other just photos and stuff of the area. And it's interesting to see some of the inspiration that they took clearly from Yellowstone for this area, including a lot of the rainbow area. I have this one I think this is Emerald Pool. So you can see some of the really vivid colors that do exist in nature. And they just kind of like Disney-fied them, so to speak. And then I did find, this is one of just kind of a bubbling thermal pool. Have you ever been to Yellowstone, Kirk?
No, Yellowstone is up there for me.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So
Yosemite is my number one that I need to see.
Oh yeah, we went camping in Yosemite and we camped right next to the water, so we went swimming in the water for fun every day, which was really neat. This is what the mud pots look like in Yellowstone. So just kind of like bubbling mud is really all it is. And then I also have this just gorgeous picture of this pool here. So
cool.
I have also a picture from the actual attraction. I have this really wonderful picture of Walt with his daughter Sharon, and he's looking at one of the mud pots. He's doing a little inspecting. I also love her dress. I kind of want that dress. Do you have the script for this, Kirk?
I do. Say, ever hear of the Devil's Paint Pots? Real mystery of the desert. Bubbling pots of mud in all kinds of colors. This is geyser country too. Uh-oh. There she blows. Sure glad y'all brought your raincoats. Look out now. You never know when she's gonna go off. That's why we call her Ol' Unfaithful. Look out now. You folks in them rear cars be ready. She's a-threatening again.
Ol' Unfaithful shot a stream of water 70 feet into the air. So if you can see this picture, you see the train going by. It wasn't a small geyser. It was huge. It was very, very high. And then I have a note about how the paint pots actually worked with like the bubbling mud in them. So what they did was they put an air compressor would release air into a submerged and inverted bucket. So they turn a bucket upside down and they stuck it into the mud and they put an air compressor like tube in it. And the resulting large air bubble would become larger and larger until it was ultimately released, creating a bubbling effect. So it wasn't like super high tech, but it was effective.
That's cool.
Made bubbles, yeah.
Simple is better.
Yeah. Oh, the only other thing I have for the geysers is they operate from an underwater deep well pump that pressurized air and water. So that's how those geysers worked. And then that's all I got. I think that's literally all I've got for this attraction because the Rainbow Caverns didn't change as far as I know.
The only thing I have the script for the mountain lion part, which just makes me laugh. Watch that wildcat, lady. Oh, glad he stayed up there. We've known these critters to take on full-grown deer more than 10 times their size and weight. You know, last trip a mountain lion showed up right over that tunnel. Oh, there's one now. So you better all be real quiet.
So I think that is it for Minetrain Through Nature's Wonderland attraction, except for maybe some changes that Mark Davis proposed, but I don't think we need to get into those this week.
No.
Well, shall we wrap this one up?
Let's bring that train into the station.
Alrighty. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for this episode of Distory. We've really enjoyed wrapping up Minetrain Through Nature's Wonderland and talking about all these animals. So many animals. Kirk, do you have any final thoughts? As we wrap up here?
Sure. If you ever find yourself being chased by some peccaries, then find a prickly pole to hide on.
I don't know. I didn't end up very well for that bobcat.
Why? He was chilling up there. You probably got it.
Fell from the first one.
Yeah, but then he figured it out. He was fine.
Fair enough. All right. And as always, as you're in Disneyland, look for these little lost pieces of these attractions because they're still there if you know where to look.
Find the piston fish.
Find the piston fish, indeed. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We appreciate you guys so much, and we'll see you next time for Distory.